Hi, this is Mallika Chopra, founder of Intent.com, and I'm excited to announce my new book, Living with Intent, My Somewhat Messy Journey to Purpose, Peace, and Joy. And I am very happy to be chatting with my friend Dani Modisett. She and I were part of Perfectly Imperfect Parents, a show we did on YouTube. And she is coming out with a new book called Take My Spouse, Please, How to Keep Your Marriage Happy, Healthy, and Thriving by Following the Rules of Comedy. And I love chatting with Dani because she always makes me laugh, but we also kind of are on parallel journeys. So, Dani, welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. So, I just wanted to share with everyone because I read your book, and it is one so entertaining and fun, but also impactful. And let's chat a little bit about kind of why you decided to work on it.
Well, it is a personal journey. So I was married almost 10 years, and I had been a comedian for most of my career, like touring and working mostly in New York and Los Angeles, and I had also taught stand-up UCLA for almost 10 years. And but I had come to a very kind of challenging place in my 10-year mark, which, by the way, I've heard is not that unusual. Like there's all this expectation on the year anniversary, and we definitely cracked under the pressure. And I started to think, wow, people always said to me they still say to me about stand-up, like, the hardest thing in the world to do, or that's the hardest thing in the world to do. And I found myself kind of like on the bed after a fight thinking, really? Stand-up is the hardest thing? I don't know. I think maybe this marriage thing is a little harder. And because, stand up, like even a bad set, it's an hour, but this was like,
you never get out.
Yeah, you could it could long till death do you part. So I started to think, what were the things that I taught people for the hardest thing in the world, supposedly, and there was a possibility that any of that information might be helpful for marriage, since it's like this really hard thing to do. And so I went and I got my syllabus from the course I taught EA, and I started to go through it, and I thought, oh, this is so interesting. It's like showing up, listening, letting go of a bad night, knowing your audience, paying attention to timing, like the element of surprise, all of these things. As I started to go through them, oh, my goodness, like this is exactly what you need for a marriage. And so I wrote as an article first for the Huffington Post. Which they called like everything I need to stay married, I learned being a comedian. And that was kind of the first incarnation. And then I went out from there and
it's such a great book. I really enjoyed reading it because it was so relatable, but also just interesting stories and interesting interviews. And it was interesting when you talk about some of the qualities you stayed in there. It's similar to some of the things I've been talking about in my new book and with Intent, but things like, showing up and listening. So important. Sometimes we just don't even notice what's happening around us, or the body language that someone is sending us, or our own vocabulary, and especially
tone.
And tone, absolutely. Tone. And with our spouses, we take them for granted, so we even are more lax about it.
Yeah, that was
and then just knowing your audience, because sometimes, we need to, again, that to me is also part of the listening and noticing. So, so Dani, the other thing is that you and I are very much kind of on a similar path, have kids similar ages, trying to balance, writing, career. I know I feel overwhelmed often, and in our conversations during our show as well, we shared so much of kind of the confusion and balance. You are going back to work now. You have this big book coming out. You're still at home with the kids. How are you finding any sense of balance?
Balance, things you have to get up at 6. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, you just have to maximize the conscious hour a day. I think you just mentioned, like I'm producing a show now for the Feminist Majority, which is kind of a part-time gig, and it's going to be a gala on May 18th. And so now I actually have to get dressed. Like I write, sometimes I don't even get dressed, but now I have to I'm like a professional woman, show up, and I have to be in meetings, and and I'm have to be available. My younger boy has asthma, and so my always like, oh my God, what if the school calls? And so much of it is about honestly taking a deep breath. Like I have to consciously tell myself during the day, okay, it's time to take a deep breath. Because you'll spin out if you try to think too much about all the balls you're juggling. And that's not even mentioning the book, which is a whole other, huge cover. So it's so interesting because it is about staying present, right? Like right now, what do you need to do?
Yep. And you and I have talked about this
too
before.
Far.
Yeah, no, you and I have talked about this before, which is both of us have, I think, kind of tried to find this balance when our kids were younger to be around more, and then kind of this fear, will we get back in the workplace? Are we kind of irrelevant now? And kind of trying to reinvent ourselves. And I know with me that comes a lot of fear and insecurity. I mean, how have you been dealing with it?
So I actually have a whole theory about this that when I like women's groups and stuff, it's this whole idea of the low flame, which I think I even talked about, that as a working mother or as a mother who's before being a mother, I really think it's important to whatever it you felt was your essence before you had children, that you keep it on the low, even if it means you only do it an hour a week. When you have babies, just keep the flame, keep the burner on, because it's much easier to turn a flame up than to kick the whole oven on. And so that is something that I really conscious of, even with the babies, and I didn't work, but I had this one show that I produced 6 weeks, and it kept me connected to what I was passionate about. And not everyone is a performer. Maybe you dance, maybe you're into music, maybe great literature, but whatever it is for you as a woman, or you became a mother, that thing has to be kept alive. Because then when everybody starts... and when everybody... I have a 12-year-old. He barely looks at me some days. I have to, get in his face and say, here. And I think if you're not prepared for that, if you turn everything off except being a mother, when that natural evolution of a child starts to bubble up, it's just so devastating. And you feel so abandoned by your children, interestingly. In your attempt to not abandon them, you actually end up feeling abandoned yourself.
Yeah, and I definitely, I feel like even for me in the process, even the last few years, I just lost, meaning the excuse of being too busy became kind of the reason I justified getting lost in who I was, even just reading a book or going for a walk or, and there was always this excuse, and just kind of taking some action to incorporate those in my life again, which don't seem like they're revolutionary, but they actually were totally transformative in a way of getting in touch with myself again.
Right, which is essential. I mean, I have a friend who is going through a very rough time in her marriage, and started coming to dance class with me. I'm a big dance class person, since I'm 9. So, and it truly has transformed her. Just this one, maybe it's an hour and 15 minutes a week that she comes and she just does it for her and her own peace of mind and the music. It starts to blossom out to the rest of your choices. You start to reconnect with what makes you happy and gives you a sense of purpose. The title of your book, it's we need to reconnect with what gives us purpose beyond her. Because the day-to-day purpose of being a mother, it's a very short lifespan. Yeah. And how is it, I mean, again, you talk very openly in the book about kind of your husband and you
getting to this crisis point. And then also I often have stated as well, like for me and my husband, like often our entire conversation is just scheduling. And
right.
like, you know, and it's just like the to-do list and like, you know, I'll be there at 4 and you come at 4:30 and don't forget this. What did you have to make a conscious effort to shift from that?
I do. I'm kind of a believer in cliche date night. And it, by the way, doesn't have to be date night. It could be date lunch. We had date lunch last week. And it's just time where you sit with that person, you know, you did meet on a date a long time ago, and see them again. I know some couples, they make a rule that we're not going to talk about kids for at least, like, you know, our time together. Because sometimes you want to talk about the kids because there's something you created together. You know, if they're doing well, it's so beautiful. Yeah. So I don't think you can be hard and fast, not going to talk about the kids, but to at least set aside time where you're relating as the two adults that you were to each other before you had children. So I think, and it is this is the thing, like this, all of this building a happier life, do it, just like a meditation practice. Mm-hmm. You have to make the choice to do it. People who are happy, it's such an interesting thing. We all want to believe, because she's just happy spontaneously. And you come to find out, the happy people, that they actually have disciplines in their life that support them having happy lives.
Absolutely. And that's definitely kind of my journey in the last year is, you know, you first have to, exactly as you're saying, set the intent, like that I need to find balance, I need to reconnect with my husband, I need to reconnect with my friends and with myself. And that first step is kind of thinking about who am I, what do I want, and then kind of actively going out and getting it.
Right. So, even with, you know, writing a book, you said, you know, after I wrote the article and I was like, I think this should be a book, I sat down and wrote a 45-page proposal, like, you know, and then the intent of every chapter was very clear. And then you can if you set the goal, you know, I mean, I prefer the word intention rather than goal, which feels like, oh God, what if you don't meet your goal? You're a big loser. You know, you don't want to set yourself up. Yeah. But intention is, you know, so much more inspired. Well,
and that's great because I do talk a lot about intents are very different from goals. Like for me, goals are mind, like it's a mind exercise and it's task-oriented, where intents come from the soul, like they're really what we want. And we may kind of realize that in a different way than we initially set the goal, but ultimately it's feeding kind of what we want to make us happy and connected and inspired and purposeful. Well, Dani, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I'm so excited about your book and feel honored I got to peek at it before. So for everyone listening, you can pre-order it on Amazon or anywhere else. It's called Take My Spouse, Please. And Dani
Take My Spouse, Please, right?
Take My Spouse, Please. And Dani also has a book called Afterbirth, which we didn't even chat about, but which is so much fun as well. And her site is www.daniklein.com. So, Dani, thank you. And definitely,
you're welcome.
Yeah, our intent audience will be hearing much about your book